I'm not even afraid. Halloween is, yeah, Healy's good. No one else will. I'm just gonna, I plan, I will probably.
Welcome to Helicon West, everybody. We're so glad to see you all here. This Helicon West is a little bit special. It's in partnership with the Utah Humanities Book Festival. So Shanan Ballam and Kristin Scott are going to be reading for us. They'll be introduced in just a few seconds. I'm going to introduce the book festival. So this event is in partnership with the 16th Annual Utah Humanities Book Festival, featuring 150 readings and discussions with published authors in 20 locations across the state throughout the month of October, which is National Book Month. The entire schedule is available online at www.utahhumanities.org. Major statewide book festival sponsors include the George S. and Dolores Dora Eccles Foundation, the R. Harold Burton Foundation, Chevron, the Utah Office of Tourism, and Zions Bank, as well as the National Endowments for the Humanities and Arts. So, yay for the book festival. Also, we want to thank the library for letting us come here every 2 weeks. Yay, library! So, you all noticed there was a survey on your chair. So, I'm going to pass around some pencils. Please take a pencil and take the time to fill out the survey.
And turn off your phones.
And turn off the phones. When you're finished with the survey, you can turn it in on the table back there, which is where they're also selling books by our guest authors. So that is all for me. I'm going to turn the time over to Rob, who's going to introduce our authors.
I'm going to introduce both writers. Thanks for coming tonight. The first writer is Shanan Ballam. Her book, Pretty Marrow, is for sale. Hold it as high as I can so you'll see it. Shanan is an adjunct instructor at Utah State University where she teaches poetry and fiction writing. She earned her MFA in poetry at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. She's the author of the chapbook, The Red Riding Hood Papers. Her full-length manuscript, like I said, is Pretty Marrow, which was published by Negative Capability Press. She was a semifinalist for the 2010 Brittingham and Pollock Prizes in Poetry, the 2010 Mae Swenson Award, the 2010 Philip Levine Prize in Poetry, and the 2012 Louise Bogan Award. In 2012, Pretty Marrow received first place in the Utah Division of Arts and Museums Utah Original Writing Competition, and I was with her in the pickup when she found out that she won. And she answered the message from David Pace, and we were sitting in front of USU Credit Union. I was going to pay my rent, and she found out she won first place. She just recently was appointed to the Utah Arts Council Board of Directors, where she will be the liaison for literary arts. She's also my BFF, so please welcome Shanan.
Rob, is this adequate temperature? Thank you. Thanks to everybody for being here. Thank you so much to Star and Helicon West. It's just a fantastic community we've built here, and just I'm so excited to be a part of it. Thanks to the Humanities Council and the library. The first poem I'm going to read is the poem from which the title of my collection was pulled. And so the title is Pretty Marrow. The person responsible for coming up with the title for my book is Brock, one of my best friends and poetry group members who helped me to edit to this book to its final version, and he suggested this title. It's called The Letter I. Letters, like bone, have pretty marrow. Intimate, gritty as a pearl, I glitters in wet dark solitude, our mouths. I shines its bright iris, flits in the river, glistening its fins. I aches to hold other letters, cries sometimes, like we do, in the tender violence of our singularity. I wanted to read that poem because many people ask, why did you call the collection Pretty Marrow? And to me, that poem talks about my love of sound, my love of words, and also that violence of our singularity, which is what I think is one of the themes that runs through my collection. The next poem I'm going to read is one of the poems that I wrote about my mother when she was in the hospital, and she was dying of liver failure due to alcoholism. And so the poems I've chosen to read tonight are mostly focused on my siblings. I'm not going to read parent poems, but so for my sisters, one of my sisters is here tonight, Allison. I'm so happy to have her. As my mother was going through this terrible disease and dying, my sisters and I became responsible for helping each other to live and to also help our mother to live, which she did. But I think it was because of our attention to all of that and being there. And also, I'm just glad to, even though the experience was terrible, to be able to have documented it in different ways. This poem is called Wonderland. April slurped my exotic brain straight from my ear, and my head floated away on its spine string into the mean, sweet, shrinking sky. All around, clouds unwound their spindles of downy skin. No, my head didn't float away at all. I was like Alice, brutally tall, opening my mouth inside a zoo of vapor animals, letting them slide serpentine, feline, canine down my throat. Dawn, noon, night, purple, blue, pink, silver, blank, paper, white. Down on earth, my feet were the size of city buses, my fingerprints, labyrinths, my ear, a terrible cave. At 4 a.m., when traffic was dead, I tiptoed to the hospital, peeked in my mother's window. My one wet eye spied the tidy bed where my mother lay, a porcelain doll. My sisters sat near her, their lips and cheeks painted pink. Purple chrysanthemums, yellow daisies in vases, the pastel green light of a monitor made me remember sugar eggs for Easter, a little peephole to view a lovely scene, how the hard frosting glue that stuck it all together was so fine when I licked that I hid in the closet and nibbled the edges, sugar melting on my tongue as I bit closer and closer to the little pink rabbit, the fluffy chick who lived in perpetual sunshine. So I chomped off the edge of the hospital. I ground the cement with my teeth, tasted every grain of sand, of salt, of sugar. I'm gonna have to cough a little for this one. Once more to the lake, for my sister, Allison. Once more to the lake. Didn't you just tell me you loved me? Didn't you just say you were sad about God? And just now, was that the sound of early morning, lake softly breathing? Now, at this hour, I can't bear to let go. Didn't we just dance on the beach with bare feet? Weren't we lovely? And wasn't my hair curled? Weren't my lips painted pink? Lily of the valley pinned, sweet perfume soaking my hair. Wasn't that yesterday? And weren't we happy? And weren't we strong? Muscles flexing under tanned skin as we dove in, trout spinning their shimmering funnels around us. Weren't we a family? Weren't we? And wasn't our father charming that day on the lake, his blue hat flying off in the wind? And wasn't he marvelous, his enormous authority as he leaned from the truck window, Marlboro dangling from his mouth, his silent concentration as he snugged inch by inch our trailer into its narrow slot? And wasn't he wonderful in the mornings before he'd been drinking, how he hauled the jet skis into the lake, rainbows of gasoline glistening? We watched strapped in bright pink life jackets as he choked the engines, then throttled them until they screamed. I loved him, you know. This is our story. We wore green bikinis, cutoffs and thongs, white-rimmed sunglasses even. We all drank rum in a cabin. And even then you knew you shouldn't marry that man, but you married him. Even then he slammed you down on the concrete, and our parents never said a thing. Even then he forgot your birthday, and you were only 16. And that was before you were pregnant, before I whispered abortion, before we dove into the lake and witnessed our own distortion underwater, before we knew our father would not survive his life, the life we helped construct and destroy. And everyone keeps saying, it is not your fault, and it's not, but go back, go deeper. Had we not been so clever, had we not been so evil, had we not fought over the one blue cup, had we not bawled in the Mexican restaurant, if we went back, maybe we'd try to be better, learn to build engines because, having only daughters, he had to do this alone. Didn't we all love one another once on the lake before we could look back and grieve, before cancer in the femur, before alcohol poisoning, before liver failure, before all these sad children, before everything collapsed? Weren't we blessed? Weren't we lovely? Once I wore perfumed flowers and a white cotton dress. Once we smiled for the camera near the lake, its cold turquoise drowsy and deep while we stood clinging. I'm asking you to take me back once more to the lake. This next poem is a villanelle. And I'll do a little bit, explain a little bit. Brock said I should talk a little more between my poems, and I think he's right. This poem is kind of exploring, all the different dangers that we see and yet are attracted to for whatever reason. We want love, yet we know how painful it could potentially be. We want the alcohol or whatever it is that we're addicted to. We want that toxicity, but it also is the calming effect to us, a calming agent. And so this poem is called Reasons and explores the reasons why we do the things we do. Reasons. You who just to feel your falling fell, unlocked your eyes to splendid shame. You who craved delicious hell fell to feel the spark in every cell. Shock of knowing shimmers your brain. You who just to feel your falling fell into silence, aching tongue of bell, hungry to be rung, to sound your name. You who crave delicious hell yearn for serpents, toxic tonics they sell, their promise to feed, to satiate pain. You who just to feel your falling fell into love, its incinerating spell, its sad hiss of ashes after the flame. You crave delicious hell. The thrill of bitter bliss propels you to part your lips, taste, relish, blame. You who crave delicious hell. You who just to feel your falling fell. This is another poem for my sisters as we were dealing with our mother we don't even remember how many weeks she was in the hospital because it was so traumatic. That there's kind of this idea that it was maybe 6 weeks or 10 weeks or whatever, but it continued and time sort of falls away. We grew up here in Utah, and have Mormon roots, but our family was not LDS, and we've struggled with religion and, you know, the idea of this Christ the Savior, and that will come in another poem that I'll read later, but I wanted to explain that as the opening image will suggest. Love song for my sisters. In a dim hospital office, a painting of an open-armed Christ looms on the wall. At his feet, meek children, cherub pink, dressed in clean robes. My sisters and I sit below in scratchy chairs, our thick brown hair knotted quickly back. Are you triplets? A woman in the gift shop asked before. Grief has made us so much alike, made us so much more. Then the small nurse with shining eyes says, your mother may be at the end of her life. And my sisters bend. We all curve into the sweet breath of one another's hair as we sit in these, then other sticky chairs. Outside, fresh, sharp iris lean together in clumps of lovely green. We have known so long, known it all. There was a note she wrote in shaky hand to make sure Libby got the bowling ball when she died, and the golf clubs too, which is all that's left besides the bills and a hope chest filled with baby shoes. In her room, we prepare our faces, scrub tears from our cheeks, lean over our mother, whisper, we have time, it will be different this time. Then you sing, sisters, your soft songs, while I wet her mouth with a pink swab that I hold in my fingers like a wand. The next 4 poems, I'll read one more from the collection, 2 new ones, and then one last one from the collection. This past July, our little brother passed away, and his name was Dylan Thomas. He was 24 years old. Alcoholism has been a problem in our family, and he drank himself to death. He died of alcohol poisoning. Obviously, that was a very difficult thing for us to go through. And I knew I had written this poem before his death, and I'd always wondered, you know, kind of what it was about. And I truly believe this is a poem for Dylan and about Dylan. This poem was inspired by walking along the Logan River and seeing something in the water that I wasn't sure what it was, and so I just kept getting closer to try to figure out what it was. And it's addressed to that piece of garbage, which actually I think just was a piece of garbage. And it's called My Paper Boat. You were an albino trout waving its tail in the river's cold current. But when I crept closer, I saw you were a white swath of plastic, perhaps fabric torn from a dress, or paper. You were a suicide note, or a love poem snagged on a ragged branch. I wanted to peel off my socks, wade into the shock of winter runoff, wanted to take you with me, your words, your little body. I imagined someone folded you into a warm pocket, dropped you by accident, or pinned you to a tree till spring wind ripped you down. Why did I not save you, lay you in the sun? Why did I not lift you, moss limp and lovely, press your river-blurred words to my face? You are my love note to the world, my paper boat. I wish you could let go and swirl away to a place unblemished, where light could pour its honey onto your face. I wish you could let go and forget I stood here on the bank, body filled with river stones, hand clutching a heavy set of keys. I should have opened my mouth to taste you, chewed and swallowed you, rescued you from unsnagging into new violence, tumble lick of rocks, river gnashing you, ragdoll. Why did I not kneel, crawl into the river to you, my bright pinwheel? So after my brother died, was a very strange, timeless bizarre experience. And he died on July 7th. And on July 22nd, I was able to get out my journal and just start writing. And I wrote and wrote and wrote. I tried to record the experience of what we were going through, that brief experience. This was the very first poem I was able to write, and it's called The First Poem After, July 22nd, 2013. I'm digging into the death bag. I'm doing it, writing with a mortuary pen. I'm facing it. I have to, even if all I can say is, the zip line in Hawaii. How did I do it? Climbed to the top of the platform, the one that looked like gallows, 2 lifelines dangling their glinting buckles. I climbed, I was fastened, all my equipment double-checked. I fixed my eyes to the point, 1,800 feet away, the other side. I leaned into emptiness, the abyss. Absence, make sense. Absence, miss my heart with your target, oh my little brother. I flew above trees, all those hungry teeth. I flew over wildflowers, their alarming, unfamiliar faces. I flew toward the place I could plant my feet, and I made it, goddammit. I was brave and I flew. This next one I want to read because Dylan would like this poem. I know he would have, and as I'm reading it, this is called the Conversation, and I really felt like I had a conversation with my little brother. Like I just listened really hard, and I said, "Are you there?" And he was there. I could hear his voice, and so this is that experience. The Conversation. Stumbled into darkness, whispered, "Dylan, are you there? I'm listening." And I listened so hard I heard concrete sizzle, moonlight blister, stars rip the sky's black fabric. I listened until I heard you say, little brother, "I'm here. I can hear you, Shan." And as always, I ached for us both to be glad. So I told you how our sisters and I, huddled in the dingy mortuary, flipped through the heavy book to pick the right image for your service notes. We saw Jesus in a luminous grove, Jesus with a little boy on his knee, smiling up. There was peace. And when the funeral director left the room, all at once we burst into laughter, hysterical to paste your face over the child's, see you gazing up, the gentle eyes. And Dylan, you laughed so hard I cried. Yeah, you said, you so should have fucking done it. I smiled into the blur, hot moon bloating, heaven, hell. I am not going crazy. I am in Utah, in Wellsville. Today is the 15th of July. The final poem I'm going to read is the poem I wrote, is the final poem in my collection. And I read this at Dylan's funeral. And the reason I read it at his funeral is because to thank all of the people who came out and helped me and my family get through that horrific time. Lots of wonderful friends, many of whom are here, helped us to get through that. And also I want to read this poem just as a reminder of, we all feel like we're inside of the darkness, but we have other people in our lives, and even strangers will care about us. We need to care for each other. This is about an experience driving through Wyoming when the entire place was a whiteout and the highway was closed, but we were stuck on it. It was bad. Whiteout, Wyoming. I inched through miles of swirling snow, transfixed by one dim set of taillights. If I let them go, I'd be all alone with only the announcer's voice cracking on the radio, telling me over and over that I-80 has closed. But there we were in the blinding white plains, a frozen snake of cars whose hazards flashed the Morse code message, "Stay close, stay close, stay close." We crept along. Every few minutes, the whole train stopped dead as wind ripped across our thin metal skins. For hours, I followed the hazards of the little blue car, as he must have followed another's, a mile-long chain of us linked only by blinking. I lost the car once. Sky and earth iced into one white blur, a lonely blank, and I was Alice, tumbling down the reeling deep throat of the rabbit hole. The heater blasted my face. My bladder ached. I was incredibly small, but gripped the wheel, nudged the pedal till faint lights glittered. A teenage boy sprang from the little blue car, his green sweatshirt whipping in vicious wind. He furiously chipped ice from his taillights before he looked back at me once and smiled, his red hair wild in the snow. Thank you.
Yep. That was my BFF, so. Get to talk to her every day. And for those of you who were wondering, the dress is Ralph Lauren. And yeah, I picked it out.
It's gorgeous.
Our next reader, her book, Mother Tongue, Kristin Scott. Her stories have appeared in the Alaska Quarterly Review, Hayden's Ferry Review, Sonora Review, Western Humanities Review, Pank, and elsewhere. Kristin's first novel, Motherlunge, won the AWP Award series in the novel, and it's in the novel, not from the novel that I thought. And she was recently shortlisted for the Center for Fiction's first prize for novel. Center for Fiction's first novel prize. As I was doing some research on her and reading through all of the reviews and such, one of the best I thought for me that exemplified writing and her came from Don Lee, who was the AWP judge on the panel, and he categorizes Motherlunge with these words. Told with dazzling prose, Motherlunge is a wry, luminous exploration of the legacy of motherhood, about the afflictions that may cycle through generations. This is a thoroughly engaging novel with wonderful turns of phrase in every sentence, and its witty humor announces a welcome new voice in American fiction, full of charm and tender wisdom. I thought it was a great, great way to introduce Kristin.
Thank you. That was a beautiful reading by Shanan. Thank you for that. And thanks, Star, for having me, and for the library and the book festival. And thanks for having such a wonderful audience. It's full, and it's a wonderful community you have here. Just tonight, feeling kind of welcomed into the circle of writers here. It's been really special. I'm going to read the first long chapter in the book. The book has lots of short chapters and then longer chapters interspersed. So this is the first long chapter. It's called 2 on 1. I lost my virginity under a skylight, under a sweating boy, an arm's length away from a bust of the great inventor Benjamin Franklin, who from his perch on the nightstand seemed to stare through his spectacles at my recent discovery, a stack of porn magazines, back issues from a previous decade, circa 78. Adam kept them underneath his bed, and while he was down the hall slamming doors in his parents' bathroom looking for condoms, I'd been reading on a group sex theme. Crowd scenes, Three's Company, Ménage and Gay Paris. So when Adam, peeling his narrow torso off me, squeaked, "Okay," and finally drove it home, I, like Anonymous, a letter-writing reader from Dayton, Ohio, thought, who would believe this could happen to me? 2 on 1. Evening fell through the skylight, darkening the head and shoulders of our founding father. I bled a little and then stopped. When Adam finally dropped to sleep, his lashes batting softly his flushed cheeks, I sat up. I pulled my head and arms through his science fair t-shirt. I put on my glasses and punched out the extra pillow behind my head. Then I reached under the bed for the December weed and finished the issue. I was wearing footies that night, ankle socks with yarn pom-poms behind the heels. I rubbed my footy feet together as I read. Lint rose up from my insteps like rice-sized Venuses from the foam. I was 17. It was a Friday night in the summer after my senior year, and Adam had said it at last. I was beautiful. 6 days later, in a hotel bathroom, my mother found out about Adam and me because I told her. You're in love, she suggested, jaw on the palms of her hands, dry elbows on her knees as she sat on the toilet. You're in love with him, she repeated. A garrulous Gemini, my mother's stories tend to puff up, double. Eventually everyone's implicated. Think, Dorothy continued, straightening up slowly and pneumatically. You, my daughter Thea, on the very day your sister is to be married, declare your love for Adam. In the orange glow from the heat lamp overhead, her tears sparkled like funeral candles on the Mother River Ganges. Oh, honey, my mother began to weep then, slumping forward and wiping her eyes with a wad of toilet paper, then spreading her giant thighs to wipe again. Oh, 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 she blushed. Above the crashing surf, her sobs floated up along with her arms, reaching towards me. And in the mirror above the sink, I watched myself bend down to her embrace. Oh, I heard myself repeat. In the circle of her arms, I discovered I was crying too. Is this what love feels like then? Everything growing remote, falling away like objects in the rearview mirror. Panic, relief, regret. It was an hour and a half before Pavia's wedding, and once again, I thought of Anonymous. I'll never forget that hot afternoon. We drove to the church, where Walter, our father, stood outside by the front door, smoking and refusing to come in. Thus, it was Dorothy, his estranged wife, our mother, 278 pounds, and giant moth-like in a sage-colored caftan, who alone compelled Pavia down the aisle and up to the altar. I wasn't wearing my glasses, but I loved the way I knew it would look always later on videotape. Pavia's 10 attendants ascending on the side to me, the maid of honor, and yes, also the tallest. And across the aisle, our tuxedoed escorts, all of us angled like slats of a privacy fence toward the couple on the dais. Rigid in our formal wear, we were a splendid army, serious and duty-bound. The church organ chorded up and down, the congregational infants gurgled. Pavia, beautiful as a bone shard in her plain dress, as evidentiary, turned in her affirmatives. Jack, her groom, sobbingly agreed, I will. And from behind the tripod, Doug, the videographer, panned the scene with exquisite soul-trained slowness. 1 month later, Adam, sullen after a Saturday teaching AP Physics prep courses, failed to comprehend my passion. We were at his house, on the couch. His parents were out of town. I was massaging my third eye with my thumb while we reviewed the newly delivered wedding video. See that zoom? I prompted him. See that focus on the close-up of the bouquet? It's not as easy as it looks. Here Adam made the sound I knew his father, the professor of pure math, acting chair of his department at the U, would make if he were there, a kind of closed-mouth sigh, committed to its single note. How about that framing? I went on to ask. Doug, the videographer, had tutored me during the wedding reception. I could point out to Adam the way the potted fern flexed in time to the organ's high bronchial melody, how the train of Pavia's dress coiled artfully towards the bridesmaid's shoes. And what do you make of that filter? I asked. For indeed, the chapel's rosette windows strained a shaft of milky light. Pavia looks really hot. Adam slid the current hustler off my thigh and settled his head into the center of my lotus position. This was painful, of course. As Dorothy might say, God didn't intend for ankles to bend that much. So I rolled forward into the cat posture, placing my hands on either side of Adam's bony hips, while he sighed again, the monotonous sigh he'd inherited from his father. And so do you, Thea. Fine then, I said, forcing my chin down towards my sternoclavicular joint, breathing into my fourth chakra. My glasses lifted off my nose and hung from my ears. Strands of my hair became attracted to the grain of Adam's corduroys. Fine. You don't think interpretation counts? Well, I don't believe in your stuff either. Explain, Adam said, working his hands into my jeans, trawling my underwear. That stuff, I said. Gravity, velocity, waves, polarity. Evidently my feelings were hurt. So while the air crackled with electricity and the VCR militated for the wedding march again, I had one more thing to say to the former merit scholar. I mean physical laws in general. And I liked the way I said it, daringly, perhaps huskily, as if I were dropping objects off some Italian tower and proving something true. Who could disagree with me if the zipper were in my teeth? Adam's mouth moved undecidedly, suggesting we. And although our bodies were already in perfect contradiction, Adam had one more thing to ask. 69, he said, as if he had his hands in his pockets and was guessing change by feel alone. It isn't easy being novice, and there was love between us, mine. I concluded with remarks that day, quoting L and A and name withheld, as we enchained a sequence on the rug, the sopping snatch, the throbbing cock, the suction and shoot. In the residence of the math department chair at Rocky Mountain State, Adam helped me make it up. So the two of us in love, and also Jack, the groom, and his bride, Pavia, add to this 7 years. Add a velveting of dust on the wedding video case. Add the fact that Jack and Pavia had moved away to a big city, landed real jobs, bought new cars, and a townhouse condo. Add that Jack frequently went away on business, and that Adam, now teaching English in Poland through a connection of his father's, wrote me infrequently and signed off Solidarność. Just thinking about him, the way he never listened to me and was always creepy quiet during sex, made me mad. And yet, I wrote back, "Do swidania." A thrilling way to say goodbye forever, I found, before pogrom and loneliness set in. By then, I too had gone to college. But of course, I was still a waitress. I still lived at home. For me, nothing much had changed except the hostility I felt for the girl who'd lettered anthro, mass comm, and gender stud in forward-leaning script on her file cabinet drawers. It grew. Then, 6 states away, Pavia suddenly called one night in uncharacteristic distress, saying, "Jack is maybe going. Everything is wrong." "You go," our mother said. "You go see Pavia." She called up Walter and they bought me a plane ticket. I packed some clothes in Dorothy's yellow vinyl suitcase. I zipped it shut and buckled a silver belt around its middle, sensing that this suitcase, the one that would accompany me on my first trip to the big city, was as quaint as hairnet, as a sanitary belt, as a can of aerosol hairspray. I didn't care. I was on my way. On the plane, I had a window seat. I watched my hometown sink away and all the rest of the country rise into view, curving in front of me at last, expectant. When I got off the plane, there was Pavia with a paperback copy of In Search of Excellence, dressed in what I recognized as sportswear. You know the drill. The way she quickly counted the crowd looking for me, the way she smiled and waved. The way we hugged, the way young women struggle with luggage that isn't really all that heavy. That habit of apologizing about the interior of a car, or all that customized debris, the gum wrappers and empty drink cups, the dog-eared stack of papers from work that need to be moved off the passenger seat to make room for you. I had scarcely seen Pavia since her wedding day, and she did seem changed. Time showed. Unwinding the car down the parking structure's nauseating ramp, steering hard left, my older sister, eyebrows meeting in a new vertical wrinkle, teeth indenting lower lip, had never looked so determined while doing a simple thing, nor more lovely. She flung her change at the fee attendant in a gesture of release, pressed firmly on the gas, and we were off. Our mother had always told us that a headache is a sign of fear, a sign of turning away from the reality of love. Somewhere high above the khaki plains of the Midwest, I had developed a headache. That day, bad. But I was having a surrogate, I thought, for my sister and the imminent loss of Jack, about which we'd been quiet. I personally hadn't turned away from shit, I told myself, for it was only a few months before, I privately recalled, that I'd pried Adam's skinny thighs apart, begging, "Baby, let me in." Love, I reassured myself that day, pressing firmly on the flesh between my thumb and index finger, seeking acupressure's indirect relief. Love, I wanted. But meanwhile, we drove on in silence, both windows open in Pavia's two-door coupe, the safety straps slapping out a happy rhythm on her similar sets of breasts. There was traffic as we got closer to the city. Our lane moved slowly toward the gleaming prisms of the downtown buildings, big seeming and impressive. TV helicopters hung above us like sci-fi insects. Would we ever get to Pavia's house, I wondered? My headache throbbed against my eyeballs, and my earlier sense of purpose, vague yet galvanizing, drained away as through a shunt. What was I doing here? I squeezed the cheek point again and took a cleansing breath. We're halfway, Livia told me, turning up the radio. We're halfway there, almost home. And these fractions were the only topic between us as Pavia bisected again and again the distance we had left to go. 1/4, 1/8, 1/16. For Pavia was always good at math, and she knew that I was in pain. And finally, defying calculation, we did arrive. Outside Pavia's townhouse, a Great Dane was standing up with his wide brown paws hooked over the top of the wrought iron fence. In the words of Anonymous, it was an incredible day. Pavia all at once asking of me, how was Dad? How was Mom? How was, what's his name, Adam? As we dragged her mother's ugly yellow suitcase to the gate. It was there in a scene reminiscent of the docks and railroad platforms, with the plastic bag waving from the stop sign and maple seeds unscrewing in the air all around us, that I was introduced to Pavia's guard dog, General. I had my arm around my sister, who suddenly was talking like a child. General, Pavia whined, stooping down and covering her kneecaps with her hands. General, say hello to Thea. Pavia pulled her hand along his bony back. I held out my left wrist, but General pushed it away with a vigorous thrust of his 2 wet nostrils. He sunk his nose into my crotch. And then I was laughing, but my sister was apologizing, while General nodded his head up and down. Thanks.
Does anyone have any questions for us?
Does anyone, the 2 writers, you guys would come up, does anyone have any questions for them? I know that's kind of strange. Come on, you guys.
I have questions for Shannon. No. Someone else does.
Question? Oh, well, I mean, that's not fair. Whose
When do
question?
both of you like to write, or when do you find the most productive hours of writing?
When is the most productive time to write?
Right.
I have to do it in the morning before work. It has to be, that's when I have time to do it. So yeah, so for me, it's all about getting up early, and I have, when I'm really working on something, I have a word count goal, which is really pedestrian and lame, but I need to have some way to measure the fact that, you know, something's happening. Even if it's not good, I have reduced the word count for the day.
I've actually, this has been a bad year for me to write, and so I'm kind of forgetting what's the productive time to write, because I was working on publishing, getting this book ready, and then after my brother died, I just haven't really done a lot. But before that, I mean, I just have to make sure that I'm just focused on my writing, you know, and I have a difficult time splitting myself in so many different directions, and so going to writers' conferences and trying to do work in the summer, and just, I know that's a lame excuse. Some of you young writers are like, there's got to be a secret formula to it, right? And I wish I could say that there was, but I think Kristin's right, you know, waking up those early hours and before the day is started, if you can get going then, that's usually a good time. Or just whenever you're most awake, your mind is awake. You know, I guess it wouldn't be in the morning. I don't know.
So can I be first, Rob? Is that okay? I'm so enthralled by what you 2 are writing about and how different your writing is. Not only the genres, but the styles, and where the humor comes in and where the sorrow comes in. And you can, both of you can do things tongue-in-cheek that are just phenomenal. I want you to talk with each other about this thing that you're both doing. I mean, this mother thing and this family thing it's something that's so intriguing, the way you both handle that topic and what you do with it. So just tell us.
Well, I don't have I was also thinking about the correspondences between our work, and I thought how you render violence, violence is so lyrical, and it's rendered beautiful. And if you get flagged for that, I say that because, I think, I tend to use humor a lot. And that's a kind of collision, I think, that happens between the beautiful and the lyrical and the violence and the things that are funny and they're not funny. Is that an impulse that comes naturally to render it that way?
With the violence?
Yeah, yeah.
I think, well, first of all, I admire, I feel like actually, my poetry is very dark and sorrowful, but I'm actually a very humorous, normal person, I really am. And I totally admire Kristin's ability to deal with things, and that's something that I just don't have the talent for. So to deal with these really heavy issues, I think there are many of they are the same issues, mother issues that are happening in both of our works, and just interesting to watch them develop in that way. I think with mine, the violence, just growing up in kind of as we all know, any landscape is violent, but I always felt that the landscape is violent and sort of just a violence toward the psyche and the physical, and so that is where I've been pushed toward. But I'm tired now, so we don't have to do this for very long.
So, Kristin, I mispronounced the title of your work, Mother Tongue. I'm curious. Right, that's how I mispronounced it. So I'm curious about two things. Where the title came from, and you also seem like you have such a deft hand at simile, and the ability to kind of describe things in a beautiful and kind of charismatic way. I'm curious, where that comes from, but also I'd love to know about the title.
The title, I just told Shannon last night that I actually, I wanted to title the book My Little Simile, but people were not having that. Not that I have a huge, pool of people to consult with, but it was a loser. But it made sense to me. And Motherlunge, someone said, it has to have some mother stuff in it, and I was really hesitant actually because it's going to have a pastel cover. It's just gonna run smack into the sentiment that I don't want. So I wanted something that would give it an edge, and so I came up with this word. And there is, toward the end of the book, there is a moment where somebody lunges towards someone violently, actually. So that's kind of what I came up with. But it's interesting, just having the word mother in the title, I think has been, I like the title, but it has, it's interesting how it sets expectations for the book that surprised me, although they probably shouldn't have. I've had people say, men say, I heard this reading, I absolutely loved your reading. I'm going to give it to my wife, and she can read the whole thing. It was like, well, what about you? So I think that there's a way in which books about mothers and family can seem to be limiting, which is not sensible, but I think it's really true. So yeah, so that's the sort of title. But
And similar?
Similar.
Your deft, awesome hand, similar?
Well, I like narration that calls attention to itself. I can't read anything without wanting to know who's talking, right? Who's the voice? And so I don't know that everybody reads that way. Sometimes there are lots of different pleasures that you can have in a book. You're reading for, what's going to happen? What's the plot? And you're not so aware of the consciousness of the narrator. But I can't help but think about it, and so I like, and I tend to like books where the narration has personality, and that's just one of the devices that you have to bring people close to the freshness of an experience.
You're incredible at it.
Well,
yes,
thank you. But there are problems. I think it's dangerous. Dangerous. No one's going to die. hold on, it could be dangerous to someone. I mean, because it does call attention to itself. It can take you off track. You know, you start this simile, it seems like a great idea. It's like this, and then soon you're way over here, and you know, that's not the tone you want, that's not where you want to be. So you have to watch out, and you can't be compulsive, and you know, I like to do it, but I try to bring it down. Yeah, so it's a poetic work.
What are you both working on now? I'm working on another collection that's called Inside the Animal, and it is some poems that are, I wrote my first chapbook about the Red Riding Hood fairy tale, and I've kind of gone back to that, but I'm revisiting it from a different angle and looking at the grandmother as one of the characters, as actually being inside the animal, being inside the wolf, but then also thinking about inhabiting the bodies of other animals. So I've been writing about other animals like owls and voles and things like that, and just thinking about the animal not just as an animal, but as a feeling, you know, the inside the animal of desire, inside the animal of addiction, things like that. And so I'm trying to really broaden that idea and explore it. And now, obviously, being inside the animal of grief with my brother's passing, and now really understanding what grief, deep grief, feels like. So I feel, you know, it's going to be a big project to try to figure out how I can interweave all of these things, but it's exciting to think of that as an umbrella idea of inside the animal.
I really love that last poem where that you read about following someone's legs in the way out. I just thought of that with being that kind of thing inside of an animal. Something that could lead you forward inside, but there's an outside that you're speaking. Anyway, I love her work, so anyway, I'm just trying to write another novel about a gynecologist.
I have a question for Kristin Scott. Listening to your reading, and I was really intrigued by your narrative and your narrative choice, because it sounded, you even mentioned that you use simile as almost, it's a poetic device, but it's so apparent in your work. And the way that you write, it seemed very, very original, the narrative, how it almost sounded like poetry, but it's not quite. It seemed more of a telling in the way that this character was talking to us. Even at times you mentioned character you. So I was wondering about your choice in that. How did that evolve? How did that come into being in your creative process?
Let me see if I get it. So you mean the choice of like the first person narration? Is that what you mean, or?
Yeah, I'm wondering about how you crafted your narrative as art, and including what choices like your first person, and if at all it felt poetic, because it sounds poetic.
Oh yeah. Well, I think it kind of comes back to what I was saying before about I tend to like books with a strong voice, where the consciousness of the speaker is foregrounded. Some novels are not like that. So some fiction's very on the down low, where it's supposed to be sort of transparent, and you're as if you're looking right down at the people, and you're not aware of someone's voice. I'm all about voice, almost more than point of view, because I don't think there is a point of view without a voice. I mean, so I think very much in terms of sound, I think as well. And then the similes, I guess, you're trying to communicate a feeling or the newness of an idea. And so and that's how I process it in my life, right? Just like, what is this like? Why is this so interesting? Oh, because it's like that. That sort of gives me, I guess, a little bit of a friction. And so I think that this is something that I do, and it's something that that probably almost all of my narrators are going to do. And it's in the book that I'm writing right now. There are 3 main characters, and you're in the consciousness of each one, but it's the same voice, having to filter through their consciousness, so it's kind of a challenge, because then they wouldn't all have the same language or metaphors, but they will all have certain sorts of impulses that come from the voice. Does that even make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we should, yeah? Are there any more questions?
Yeah.
Oh.
Is the gynecologist a girl or a boy?
That's a man.
Oh.
Well, thank you. Please, let's do another round of applause. Your turn.
Yeah, as you're leaving, if you filled out that survey, please leave it on that table. And then also, during open mic, you can go back there and purchase the books.
And Kirsten and Shannon, you might want to go back and sign books while
They'll be signing their books, so that's exciting. If you want them. Here they are.
Both here, Shannon's 15.95.
Kirsten's 15.
15.
And they just
15.
is it just cash?
Cash or check? Cash or check?
Favors.
So, somebody, we're moving to open mic now. I'm going to announce readers, 3 readers at a time. And feel free, you can come and sign up still for open mic, even if you haven't signed up yet. There's still room. We have until 8:45 if we want to. And you have 7 minutes, so make sure you limit yourself to that, or we'll help you limit yourself. The first 3, first is going to be Susan, Justice Rose, then Isaac, Tim, and then Kendall Pack. So, come on up.
I will. But thank you. This I haven't read here for a while, and it is just amazing. Maybe I should just sit back down. The reading was fabulous. Thank you so much. I agree with whoever was in the comment, whoever made the comment here that prose can be so close to poetry. There's absolutely stunning. And of course, Shannon is, I don't know, are we BFF?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah, I'll take that one. And so many people heard you. I'm going to read 2 poems. And those of you who have been denizens of this event, they might sound familiar, sorry. But yeah, here they are. The first one is called Signs. The penny slipped into my hand, your whisper for your thoughts into my hair, whipped by hot mountain winds. The cooled peppermint tea, I sipped to a last sip, reading your email brimming with typos from an unsteady hand. The sawing sound of crickets beneath my bedroom window, steady messages into the brown night, thick with lust. The heavy scent of sagebrush crushed by the late October storm, intoxicating, soaking my deserted sheets. Without warning, this is how it ends. Says he. The second poem is what you could consider a persona poem with a little bit of an attitude from the speaker. Dressed to kill in small town Utah. I'm putting on that little black dress, walk down Main Street, every hairline wrinkle showing in my cleavage, endless like time. That little dress, sleeveless, backless, tight like armor. Oh, how the ruffles flirt and veil my weathered knees, and yes, every strand of hair shaved to a stump, a showstopper for sure. Just look at the green wave from north to south. No one, no crossing can stop me. Blank greeting cards sigh and wave from the Hallmark shop window, the ones never sent to me. And I don't care. By the sports goods store, prime bicycles sparkle in a chorus line. Front wheels turn to follow my little black march. And I'll keep walking, even if this is my last stretch, under stealthy looks shot from idle eyes, hooded in family vans, eyes my spike heels might just gouge out. Eyes starved for steamy sidewalk dreams, modest shorts, aching to drop behind the butcher shop where I order tongue and tenderloin. And how that blue-eyed butcher longs to wrap me in crackling sheets of paper, hairs standing to attention on his beefy forearm. I might just die and be buried in this little black dress. And the band will play on, and we will all paddle to this other world, across the sizzling sticks of coffee, black, no cream, no sugar. Thank you. And here I am.
Yeah, it's good. I've got two poems. They're two persona poems in the voice. Do I have to? They're two persona poems based off Caliban from The Tempest. And these are based off a conversation I've had with Susan. But, okay, let's go. To Miranda. A verse to Miranda who will never read this. You left long ago for foreign lands, and maybe you were never here, and I just created a port in this delusion for you to stay a while, your pity mistaken for affection. A brief touch of my hand when you told me, if I were anyone but Caliban, you could love me. There are many lies I've told, but you knew I couldn't promise that. Was that how you let me go? And my second one is called Caliban Buys a Duster Coat. Oh, yeah. Caliban's first year of college started well. In the first week, his isolation is an exotic language. Many thrill to hear it spoken, but like cheap beer, the buzz isn't worth the soapy taste. The problems start in the computer class where they show him the GUI, the internet, but his big, ill-formed fingers can't hit just one key, leaving only GERT on the blank screen. Then, when he crosses campus, he sees girls in short skirts, high hair, tanned arms, moving about in groups, 3s or 4s, but some look at Caliban with curious interest and make him blush. But then he hears them laugh and sees Miranda rolling on the sand, laughing. At the sloppy cue, he scrawled on a parchment, and he is paralyzed. So he trips out to the Western store and picks out a black duster coat, likes how it widens his shoulders, but mostly he likes the canvas covering his bowed legs, hides his duck walk. And now, with new armor, he strides boldly, talks quickly like everyone else. At a dance, he grinds clumsily on a girl who tells him to stop, but still takes another turn on the floor. In class, he learns a tactic, get 10 words a minute, holding his hands out like Mozart, then bringing them down on the keyboard. Swan's Landing. He writes, I hit him with a trout. But the coat is itchy, makes him sweat in class. When it rains or he's hit with sprinklers, he smells like car upholstery. When he sleeps at night, it looms over his small dorm bunk, judging him from its hanger. As the cold of winter comes, he slips on ice because fully buttoned the coat makes him shuffle, and he dances at comical ice capades before he falls on his ass. Late in January, he's walking to the dorm, shaking the coat that built up under the coat's hem, growling like the damned when a woman disengages from the shadowy wall. Black leather, closed cigarette between red lips, not Miranda. Lose the coat. You look better without it, she excels. So Caliban returns the duster to the store, buys a second-hand Sega Genesis and a winter coat that makes him look like a grape but keeps the cold out. The woman waves when she sees him. He smiles and waves back.
I know it's kind of taboo to read from a computer, but the internet wasn't working on campus today, so get off my back. All right. So I had this idea for a story where, because I was watching a film last year that was this just terrible independent romantic comedy, and just followed all the normal tropes of an independent romantic comedy. And I thought, what if we followed the quirky comic relief, but years later when his life had kind of gone downhill? So here we go. Jerry Dunnigan owned the ice cream shop on Regent Avenue. He'd owned it for 30 years. He sold black licorice ice cream, a personal favorite, and peppermint and peanut butter and creamies by the box, 24 per, for just $7 from a large freezer with clear doors that smelled of old milk and freezer burn, and sodas like sarsaparilla and birch beer. But when I drove into town 2 hours ago, the windows were boarded up and a for rent sign, worn and faded, leaned against the front door, and the pungent smell of almost turned dairy was drifting into an indiscernible nothing in the gray sky above. Dunnigan was long gone, dead or retired, and it looked like no one wanted to forge on in his place. Fremont changed in the 2 years since I left. Without an ice cream shop, the kids find their after-school kicks beating the shit out of each other in the alleyways near Main Street, where me and Tyson used to park his Datsun and blast Rage Against the Machine as some sort of social commentary to all the stray cats hanging out in the dumpsters. I watch a group of kids in a semicircle cheer on their two friends as they throw sloppy punches landing around the stomach for the most part, me pulling the shades back on a second-story window and smirking at the younger fighter, the redhead, as he throws a punch at his 6-foot-tall opponent, a boy with the build of an industrial freezer and the fighting prowess of a newborn babe, all wrapped up in his loving mother's arms, so innocent, so sweet, so unaware of the world around him. The ginger lands a couple of good ones while Dumbo lumbers around him, waving his arms. Little guy finally gets up close and levels the killing blow at his opponent's chin, making an audible crack, and the boy goes down. The gang disperses as big boy scrambles to his feet, holding his jaw and wandering after them, probably a concussion. "John," Dana says behind me over near the open refrigerator, "you want a soda or something?" I turn around, shuffling my game leg, and smile. "Sure, Dana, anything you got." She reaches in, the light of the refrigerator soaking over her arm, illuminating the short golden hairs, and grabs out a can of cola slick with condensation, and I take it, chilly on my fingers, crack it open, and pour it down my throat, dry and sealed. "Will you find him, John?" she says, her eyes big on me, staring at my pulsing Adam's apple as I swallow. I put down the cola. "I'll do what I can, Dana," I say, "but I can't promise anything." "Find him, John," she shuts the refrigerator. "Like I said, Dana, I'll find him," she says. "Don't be a jackass, John," she says. I didn't hire you for your bullshit," she says. For a moment we make a connection. She looking at me with a hunger, not a starving, but a hunger nonetheless, and I can't blame her, sad little minx, living in Fremont. See, men, real men, don't hang around hoping for factory work and killing time at the bars. No, we all migrated north to the universities and big cities where we could educate ourselves and find some meaning in the moments we can't quite cut out of the past. Those moments that stick and roll around in the dirt until nothing else will stick to them. But Dana knows what she's doing to herself. "I'll find him, Dana," I say, smiling to sedate her. "Where do we start?" "You're a shitty detective, John." She walks over to the door and throws it open, inviting me to leave. I head to the door, grabbing my long coat from the arm of the couch and draping it over. "P.I., Dana, not a detective. Probably for the best." She shuffles me out and slams the door behind me. And then I'll read one other section from it. The investigation of missing person Tyson Welliver, day 3. 12 o'clock p.m., neighbor knocks on my door, waking me. I answer. She claims I stole her copy of Time. No case without evidence. Seems put off. States, You can keep, don't keep, I paid for it. We'll spend next hour deciphering meaning of statement, everything's a clue. 1 p.m., nothing shakes out on the neighbor's statement. Speaking of shakes, McFlurries. Picked up a large M&M for the stakeout. So good I picked up a large Oreo mile down the road. Note, look for deals, coupons, punch cards next time I stop in for my ice cream. 2 o'clock p.m. Sitting outside last known residence of Tyson Welliver, man enters building at 2:35, exits at 2:38 to smoke a cigarette, tosses butt of cigarette on the porch but does not put it out with his heel, returns inside at 2:40. At 2:42 I walk up to the porch and smash cigarette to avoid fire. At 2:43 I see a sign in the window stating, security in caution. Seems to be only half a sign. Cryptic, meaningful, must decipher. 3:30 p.m., third McFlurry, M&M again. No coupons, no punch cards, no deals. 4 o'clock p.m., parked outside Pearson Auto, last employer of Tyson Welliver. At 4:05, turn on K-Rock radio. Queen comes on at 4:07. Usually wouldn't enjoy it, but listen intently this time. At 4:10, song ends. Note to self, listen to Queen again. 4:15, familiar song comes up, unsure of title, turn volume up to 20, can't quite get it. 4:16, 2 men exit Pearson Auto approaching my car. They are shouting, can't hear song. I roll up windows and turn volume up to 30. 4:17, older man slams driver's side window with closed fists while younger man strikes hood, losing concentration, turns volume up to 40. Younger man jumps on hood, very noisy, almost got the song. Older man cracks window, I press lock on doors. 4:18, turn volume up to 45, figure it out. They don't write like that anymore. Maybe John Mellencamp. Older man breaks window. Note to self, check to see if John Mellencamp is our guy. 4:19, older man pulls me out of car, voice on radio says, Great Kind Band. Note to self, big fan of the Great Kind Band.
Okay, so our next 3 will be Jay Anderson, Aaron Tim, and Trevor Grant.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm reading on an electric thing too, so it's okay. This is a poem that I wrote recently while in an entomology lab, and I called it Lab Desk Reflections. Enough of the God postulates. 3 things that are necessarily true and potentially relevant are: A, an adjustment to external stimuli is at the mercy of biomechanics. B, an intake in oxygen that exceeds required doses leads to a drop in blood pH and ultimately death. C, incoherent dialogue between artistic friends over aged wine and a strange bearded man straddling the piano is probably an underappreciated memory. Understanding the above 3 truths may lead one to conclude that life is fragile. However, taken in context, the correct conclusion would be that life is in the sulfur pots at 100 degrees centigrade. It's in the musky basement apartment where lovers spoon each other to stay warm during winter's death cry. It's in the speckled proteins in your vitreous humor that increase when you're stressed. It's in the haplopolyploid toadstool genome encoding for a purple cap on your front lawn when you overwatered. It's in the thermoregulatory beads of sweat on your cheek when you lay your head on my chest, resting in the thistles, 12 ounces of stout sifting through my liver, and a pelican flying over our heads. But it's not in the unmoved Aristotelian mover, and it's not in the social structure theological bogs of Confucius. It's not in the blastula in the womb, and it's not in the man who lived in his bathroom. It's not in the heat of intertwined phalanges, upward strokes, erect against the wall at 12 a.m., a unified climax in the neighbors partying upstairs. It's where survival happens and experience ends. If God is a personal one, then I love him and she loves me, and love is love, and we're postulating happiness for another day, but today might be the only day.
Okay. Whoa! Okay. You know what? I'm not even gonna mess with that stupid thing. I don't like it. Mitch's worked better. There was some rhyme and reason to it. Okay, so I wrote a very short story. I'm gonna speak loudly. We're good, right? Good. Awesome. Fantastic. We're good. A rule. Okay. Okay, so I wrote a very short story. It's called Frankenstein's Monster. Here we go. Jasper interlaced his fingers and cracked his knuckles. Scanning the laptop screen, he smiled. This was the best chapter yet. Jasper leaned the kitchen chair back and reached for the refrigerator door handle. He heard a creak and felt his stomach lurch upward. Woofing out a "goddammit," Jasper fell to the floor. The apartment filled with sound as the force of Jasper's fall yanked the earphones free of the laptop. I should move the table closer to the fridge, Jasper thought, as he crab-walked off the fallen chair. Pushing to his feet, he once again lamented not having superpower. Geez, I just wanted a damn do. Huffing, Jasper popped the tab and sat back down, plugged in his headphones, and was about to start typing when a loud knocking shook his door. Yeah, I've already turned it down. Mellow your shit. The computer binged, telling him that someone had done something on Facebook. The loud knock came again, even though the apartment was now quiet. Go away! Oh my god, that game is so lame. Who are these tools? Jasper hated the people who posted on the old school gamers page. They were constantly comparing classic D&D to the hack new games. It was enough to make him puke. This time, the door shook like in a cartoon. Jasper jumped and a very girlish scream broke over his lips. A kick sent the door flying inward. Shards of wood struck the computer and sprayed over its owner. Jasper was shocked still, his eyes the only things moving. In the doorway stands a man in a red loincloth. His chest fills the doorway. His head brushes the frame. Jasper gasps. He knows this guy. And his long blonde hair, his broad shoulders, massive pecs, and even the loincloth are familiar. Jasper has been drawing him for as long as he can remember. Oh my God. Miguel Magnuson. Jasper sputters and stands up, brushing bits of his front door from his shirt. The man walks forward and grabs an empty kitchen chair. Gingerly, he bends his bulk into a sitting position. His voice vibrates the room. Jasper can't help but shiver. It was just how he imagined it. You are Jasper Keene? I need to speak with you. Jasper's heart began to race. Oh my God, this is so awesome. I am probably going on a quest or something. Jasper emitted a squeal-like giggle. I don't have much time here, so let's get started. Miguel leaned back and crossed his arms over his pecs. First of all, my name makes no sense. I am based on your idea of Vikings, but my first name is Spanish. What? Didn't you want to ask me something, like for help or something? I came here to ask you about me. Only you can change me, so I need your help. Okay, Jasper's voice slid up 2 octaves. So I need a new name. Mine makes no sense. One name is Spanish, the other Norse. Miguel stood up and waved his hands over his chest. Also, look at this. What is this? I can't touch my shoulders, see? Miguel attempted to hug himself, but his hands never connected with his shoulders. I have muscles that make no sense. My elbow looks like a dent. Come on, you gotta fix this. Why, dude? You look so awesome. I drew you when I was like 12. All my friends think you're sweet. That's the problem. You didn't have any knowledge of anatomy then, and you don't now. Look at my crotch. Miguel grabbed the front of the crimson loincloth. I got nothing going on down here, and I got all of this. Miguel gestured to his arms and chest, but none of this. He again grabbed his loincloth. Heat flushed Jasper's cheeks as he looked away. Okay, I guess, but why does it matter? Do I really have to go into that? Miguel raised an eyebrow. No, I guess not. Jasper wrinkled his brow. Wait, what about the world? Krondor is awesome. What about the 2 moons, the purple sky? Jasper's hands shook as his voice rose. The den of wizards, that was amazing. Plus, you have a giant vorpal sword. I wrote that you cut off the heads of 3 guys at the same time. Come on, you have to admit that was sweetness. Jasper began pacing faster and faster. He wasn't even looking at Miguel now. A large hand stopped him mid-pace. None of that is awesome. Not by itself. Look, you need to have purpose, direction. Your artistic choices have to make sense. When I killed those wizards, the only thing I was thinking of was,
Why were they living in an old mine shaft? That seems like a terrible place to store volatile spell components. Also, the lighting would be horrible. They should have had an office, a lab, or something. Miguel let out a long breath. Look, everyone wants to know where they came from, why they exist. You can't ask your creator, but sometimes we can. I'm just asking you to think about my story. Make sure things make sense. I have to live this life, and I would like it to have meaning. Dumbstruck, Jasper just stared at the doorway. A woman in a leather and chainmail contraption, one that pushed huge breasts up to her chin, filled the doorway. Oh, Miguel started. My time is up already. Turning to Jasper, Miguel bowed. And Landia wants to talk to you as well. Thank you, Bob.
Good evening, guys. I'm lucky to be here. I usually have to work on Thursdays, and I got work off, and I was like, you know what, I'll read something one here, might as well. So, poetry. So, I just kind of wrote this a couple days ago, so it's really short. It's like a work in progress, but I like it, so I hope you guys will too. It's entitled Corpus Conundrum. My blood speaks in isograms, sputtering in jam mints like Promethean torture. My pulse wails with oscillations, droning waves of stony impatience. My heart screams in binary, rupturing into echoes inside an empty chest. My tongue sings in stigmas, culling the abject remains of my community. My eyes argue to augment, battering curses with a Cain rage. My teeth swallow lies, firing at idiosyncrasies like spitting gravel. As I stare into the mirror, my reflection is a relay, meronyms without a hole. And I ask the mirror, who is this cacophony of parts?
There's only one more person on the list, so if there's anybody else who wants to sign up, go for it, please. Okay, so unless other people sign up, our last reader will be Tim Keller. All right. Woo!
I thought about doing the Aaron squeal, but I don't think I can. Anymore. Maybe if the story calls for it. Okay, so I'm one of these people that are constantly forcing books on my friends that I like, and etc. And a couple of years ago, a friend of mine forced one on me that had a profound effect on me. So I wrote this story about it. Well, not about it. It was just inspired. The gym was dark. The dance committee always made sure the lights were low and the strobes were intense. That way they could sneak out to drink or make out behind the bleachers. Music blared through speakers around the mezzanine where Janet Ciccone perched to watch. The slow song was over, replaced by some techno remix. The room throbbed with energy. One did not hear music like this, one felt it. Like a pagan festival it was, sweaty couples untangled themselves, jumping, gyrating, and slamming into one another. Some surfed the crowd, passing hand to outstretched hand across the room. A few just held each other, swaying. Jan could always tell who was really in love. They were the ones that slow danced, even when the music got fast. "What's the matter, Jan?" Claire Jensen asked, breaking her concentration. "You've been pouting over here all night." "Just waiting for a good song." "Waiting for someone to ask you, you mean?" Claire cackled and skipped away. God, I hate her, Jan thought. Especially because Claire was right. Jan was waiting, well hoping no praying would be more like it. Then she saw him, there on the dance floor, the most beautiful boy she'd ever seen. His eyes closed, swaying blissfully unaware that Claire was closing in. "Get away!" Jan screamed in her mind. "She's a skank! Can't you see she's a skank?" Jan watched helplessly as Claire danced closer, stalking her prey. Claire's motions were stiff and disjointed by comparison, not really in time with the music. He, on the other hand, he was the music. The song changed, and in the confusion, Jan lost sight of him. She was immediately seized by a profound sense of loss. Don't be an idiot, she thought. Sure, he's cute, but he's just another boy. The place is thick with them. This didn't stop Jan from scanning the crowd. She caught a glimpse of Claire's sanguine gown as the back door slid shut. It wasn't fair that a person like Claire should so easily meet a guy like that. He was way too good for her. She'd probably just sleep with him and then tell her Neanderthal boyfriend about it so he beat the poor guy up. Not this time, Jan vowed, and set off after them. Before Jan even reached the door, Claire was back, alone. She didn't look happy about it either. Could it be the mighty Claire shot down? This guy was either a genius or gay, and she had to know which. Jan burst into the crisp autumn night, lifted her gown, and raced to catch him. The boy was 100 or so yards ahead when she spotted him walking across the football field between the school and the highway. She saw him more clearly as he neared the glow of the streetlights. Jan could just make out his friendly call to a dog at the far end. But a single ear-splitting yelp brought her up short. She watched in shock as he caught the dog by a neck, threw it to the ground, and shock gave way to amazement when he ripped open the dog's throat and fed. Completely drained the animal, threw it into the path of an oncoming car, and was gone. Since that night, she'd watched him, studied his every move, and with each night became more and more enraptured. Jan knew exactly what he was, his grace, impossibly perfect features, innate sense of style, not to mention the occasional dead dog, gave him away. She'd never imagined she'd come across a creature that haunted her fantasies, a vampire, a real-life vampire. Homecoming found Jan sitting in the same gym, watching the same people do and say the same things. Nothing ever changes, she thought. Contrast between her boy and the others in the room, like the different species he was, but of course she mused that's exactly what he is. Jan ached to be with him, to be part of him. She downed the contents of her smuggled flask. Courage in a bottle, she thought, making her way over. Hi, she muttered. I'm Janet, he finished for her. His voice gave her chills, his eyes so deep she could lose herself in them. I asked her out, he offered, smiling warmly. I'm Jason. Janet stared at her shoes. She wasn't used to being this forward, and to her horror, she couldn't think of anything to say. Jason laughed and put his arm around her shoulder. It's such a beautiful evening. Would you care to walk with me? She nearly fainted from excitement as he led her along the same route as the first time she'd seen him. Arm in arm, they crossed the field and into the stand of trees. For the first time in a long time, Jan was happy. Gradually, she found her voice again. This is nice, she gasped. Shh, he whispered. Let's not spoil this by talking. His lips brushed her cheek, his hand, so soft, so gentle, yet unimaginably strong. It was everything she'd imagined and more. He laid her down, tugging at her clothes, almost ripping them off. She reveled in his body, taut muscles under smooth, silky skin. The intensity of emotion so powerful she could scarcely breathe as he brought her to climax. I love you, she gasped. Jason collapsed on top of her. I know what you are, she whispered, and I love you. Jason raised his head and peered at her quizzically. I know what you are, she repeated. I know and I don't care. I've been watching you. I love you and I want to be with you forever. Forever? Yes. And you really know what I am? Oh, yes. No more pretending then. Jason pulled her gently to her feet and hurled her into a tree. Agony erupted in her eyes. Then nothing. The world came slowly into focus as she found herself hanging by her hands somewhere. You needn't bother screaming, he said. No one will think to look for you here. Jason, the one and only. What? Why? She asked. Why? It's what I do, that's why. But the animals. Claire, we made love. I thought I had needs, he said, wiping the blood from her face and licking his finger. Besides, it sweetens the meat. Oh, the animals. A sad necessity of the modern age, I'm afraid. It's the same with Claire. A girl like her goes missing, the whole world goes nuts. Any more chick like you? No offense, sweetie, but nobody gives it a second thought. You don't have to do this, she said, looking desperately for a way out. Maybe, she thought, maybe someone will come. I won't tell anyone, I swear, she said. Jason looked casually through belongings, her clothing, her jewelry, her purse, and finally her phone. He laughed, stopped at one of the pictures. Jason held it up for her to see. His ever younger brother, the phone bathed their faces in a cold blue light, like lambs to the slaughter, he said. World at your fingertips, your life's all but guaranteed, but it's not enough, is it? You run around desperate to be something, anything else. Well, congratulations, little girl, you found what you were looking for, except I'm not your savior. I'm the boogeyman, he laughed. I'm the monster in your closet. I am what goes bump in the night. But I love you, she sobbed. Sucks for you, sweetness, he said, dousing her belongings with lighter fluid. I don't even know what that is. You're nothing but livestock to me. He struck a match, watched it burn to his fingers, then tossed it on the pile. An entree, he said. Sounds better in French, don't you think? More civilized. He crushed the phone in his hand, tossed it on the fire, and turned to face her once more. Oh, I see. You thought we'd be soulmates, that you'd save me from my miserable existence, that we'd be the star-crossed lovers you dreamt of in your bed at night. Did you ever stop to think what that would mean? No, no matter. She shrieked as he sank his teeth into her breast and sucked long and deep. He stopped to lap at a rivulet of blood escaping down her flat stomach. Jan's heart slowed as she watched the flames burn down. Jason frowned. Not as sweet as before. Listen, if you could manage to control your fear just a little, I'd appreciate it. She managed only a low moan. There's no pointy reason. Fear is for people that have a chance. If you could just accept it, the inevitable, please. I mean, if you love me as much as you say. No? Oh well, spicy it is.
Buy books on your way out and drop off your survey and help us put the chairs in. And thanks to the library.